Alright, so I'm ready to try to get this to the right size. What I use a lot of times to measure, aside from the standard measure tools here in Maya, are polyplanes and polycubes. And the reason for that is that I can snap them and get a dimension while snapping to other objects. So pressing Shift and right-click, here's the marking menu for polygon creation. I'm going to make a polyplane, and I'm going to snap this by holding V as in Victor to one of the long sides of my sculpture and off over to this wall. It's interesting where it's snapped to. Why did it do that? This sculpture is a NURB surface. V for Victor is a polygon snap. So I'm going to make sure that in my snaps here I've got curves, I've got all kinds of things. I'm going to snap to some curves and points and try this again as a polyplane and V. And there's my snap pretty nicely going along here, at least snapping onto the curves on that side. Okay. And if you notice, because I was using the point snap, again, it went to something over here in a polygon. So one more time now with the polygon snap off, here's my polygon, or with the point snap off. Here's a polyplane, and I'm going to snap this all the way along as well as I can. Okay, this is neat. Why is it doing this? Because I'm close enough here. My tolerance, right, on the snap is close enough to hit something on one of those curves. I'll try this. Here's a polyplane. I'm going to snap it, and I'm going to pull it. Doesn't want to. In this situation, I would look at the other tools I've got available. I know this is a polyplane. It's okay that it's missing it. That's fine. I'd like this to go all the way to the end. If I press F9 for vertex, select those vertices and W for move, now I can take those vertices and I can snap them over onto the end on that decking. And I can get a pretty good measurement. So the important part here, did it take me a couple of tries? Yes, and that's really okay. Sometimes you have to just work with it. Things may take an extra try. That's really fine. What I also looked at is I said, this object is NURBS, those are polys. Between the two of them, and really isolating down what I need to do by turning off and on different snaps, I was able to throw a rectangle across this, or a polyplane. Now, this polyplane then, which I can actually pull over here, this is no longer the original dimensions of the polyplane of whatever it was. These are still in centimeters. But now I've got a clean line I can use a measure tool on if I did grab some vertices and move it. So here's a distance tool, and I'll turn on my snap, and I'm going to snap here my distance tool to figure out how long the short side is. So 35.629 centimeters. Fairly short. This is a desktop model. And the actual wall, let's go into a perspective view. The actual wall is 873. So I have quite a disparity. And what I'll do is I'll take these two numbers, there's my 35.629, and I'll divide. And I'll come up with a scale factor to grab the parent box, or parent polycube, of that whole sculpture and scale by. And here's how this looks. Pulling up my calculator and taking 873.0, 0.1 is probably pretty good. 0.1, rounding off there. Divided by 35.6. Gives me a scale factor of 24. So now I can take this number and copy it. And back over here in Maya, let's delete these measure tools. Back over here in Maya, selecting that polycube, which is the parent of all my coastline sculpture objects, and up here in the relative transform, I'm going to paste in that scale factor for X, Y, and Z. So it's a uniform scale. Now when I hit enter, and I'll make sure I do this in scale. In the scale node, I'm going to paste in into X, Y, and Z that number I copied from my calculator. When I've got all three in, hitting enter, and now my sculpture will scale up. And so ideally in a top view, come back and look at it, this will line up and size nicely onto that wall. And we can see where when this was made, it was a little bit off, that the decking has an angle to it and things. So we're going to straighten those pieces out a little bit. There's no reason to have an odd angle if you don't have to. And this will make some working fairly easier. I do have at least a consistent edge on the edge of right there. On the edge of this coastline sculpture, that edge is straight. And so that's what I'm going to refer to when I snap. So the last part, now that I've got this scaled, is I'm going to turn back on my curve snap. I'm going to press D to move the pivot. And I'll snap this over. So I'll turn on my curve snap. I'll turn off my curve snap. And I will snap the pivot onto those points. As an alternate, I may want to convert this to polygons anyhow. We have a lot of resolution in here, a lot of geometry we may not need. So I may want to optimize this. But at least I can take this object and I can get it right up here on the wall and get my sculpture in the right place. And so it looks like it's low. Again, I can fix this by pulling it up so the bottom decking boards are down at 0 here. And when I'm all done, let's go in shaded mode, and under shading, here is X-ray. Let us see what's going on here. I'll pull this up along the building, and eventually I'll get this all snapped in the next lesson. I've got this scaled in the right size while preserving the right scale of everything. And we can see that the kinetic sculpture is actually very, very tall next to the building, assuming things were built correctly. And the decking is a little large, and so I may need to finesse the measurements slightly on this, but I can get that on again with scale.